you look at Dirty Harry and the Man with No Name, those are damaged guys. You wouldn't want to be them. Yeah, they're on the tip of the spear and they're doing things that, you can take real issue with, but they're not like high-fiving afterward, they're going away alone and, they have to live with themselves. Which isn't to say that there's not a pro-violence slash authoritarian tenor to the Dirty Harry movies. I think it's important to know that the second Dirty Harry movie is about a cadre of vigilante cops who are killing people who they believe the justice system has not captured or punished properly. And Dirty Harry goes after them. So Clint and Siegel, or Clint and the producer, rather, Siegel didn't direct that one, deliberately position people to the right of Harry Callahan. And then also, Clint Eastwood, the man, supported the Brady Bill for handgun
Yeah.
control and signed petitions after the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy for handgun control. He owns weapons. He had a concealed carry permit in the 80s when he was he's sort of the most famous actor in the world and a politician, and his family was receiving death threats. I don't believe he has handguns any longer. He has scatter guns, shotguns and such on the wild property he owns in Northern California, but that's responsible husbandry of the land. That's not, bloodlust. So I think at first he embraced the Dirty Harry character and he tried to make it stick, and the Dirty Harry movies become more and more absurd as they go along. In the last one, he's being chased through San Francisco by a toy car with a bomb in it, and so I think at a certain point he just I even think that the monkey movies, the orangutan movies, were an effort to find another franchise, so he never had to make another Dirty Harry.
Yeah, I love you. I think you called him after the Every Which Way But Loose. You said he had settled into his role as America's goofball, which I love. I love that phrase. um, and actually, that's an interesting thing. You talk about his support for the Brady Bill, and there's a lot about his personal beliefs that if you just think of him as just like, oh, he's kind of a conservative or he's a right wing darling or whatever, that you would be surprised to know he, at least sort of through the eras have been, for abortion rights and civil rights and women's rights and a whole slew of things that aren't necessarily associated with the right. And so he is an interesting sort of like he's got his art and he's got his personal beliefs and they kind of intersect, but then there's some surprising qualities he has.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lifelong conservationist, as I said earlier. He's an animal lover. His eldest daughter, Allison, is very active in the animal rights community, and there's foundations with the Eastwood family name in that field. But in the aughts, was it when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor of California? Clint had been appointed to the State Parks Commission by the Democrat Gray Davis, whom Schwarzenegger replaced after the recall vote. And of course, Arnie kept Clint aboard. They were chums. They skied together in Sun Valley and all this. And Arnie let Clint go in part because Clint opposed running toll roads through state parks. So and Arnold's not like a flaming right winger,
Yeah.
but he's to the right of Clint on certain matters, and this was one of them. And they let Clint go from the State Parks Commission. He says, "That's okay. I've already got a day job." But you don't hire me to a Parks Commission and then ask me to run a highway through a park.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you note that he is very much like more libertarian than Republican. And although he's like always been a lifelong Republican voter, but having also donated to Democrats, I think, and things like
Hmm.
that. But it seems like, and there's a connection to a lot of his characters of just this sort of like, let me be independence. Don't tell me what to do. I get to make my own decisions. And, that almost arises above any particular issue. Seems like that's his mantra.
I believe so. Yeah, I think independence and liberty. There's something about in the Outlaw Josie Wales, which is his first great Western as a director. He assembles a community, but then he rides off. And I think that's in many ways, his sort of internal character. The thing I got asked the most about when people heard I was writing about him was the 2012 speech at Mitt Romney's Republican National Convention, where he famously put an empty chair on the stage and spoke to it as if he was speaking to Barack Obama. And if I watched that in real time, and my hair was on fire, as many of my left leaning friends felt. And these people are still angry about it. And I might have been as well, but I watched it again. And if you watch it now, my partner is an actress, and she said, this is an improv exercise. We used to
Right?
do this in Playhouse West. And there's something so crazy about it. It's so the entire speech was so strange that on the night on Fox News, commentators were suggesting that Clint was a Hollywood lefty who had gone onto the convention floor to sabotage Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
And his best argument for Mitt was he's a businessman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to him, that's a compliment. To Clint, if I call you a businessman, that's praise. And he thought that was enough. And he had no idea uh, of the controversy he caused. And he laid the blame on the Romney campaign because they didn't brief him in advance to say, by the way, what are you going to say?
Yeah, we gotta yeah. He
Just
just went out there with
turn
nothing.
TV.
Yeah, I think you said he just saw a chair there and was like, "I'll just grab this and I'll do this thing with it."
Right. And the stagehand thought the guy who brought it out on stage, he's an old guy. He wants to sit down.
Yeah. Yeah, it was bizarre in the moment, certainly, but yeah, looking back, it is so funny to think of it as just enacting an improv exercise. But but actually, that may be a good time to pivot a little bit to his political career. Can you talk a little bit about his sort of non-political political career in terms of like no grander aspirations and like how he got into being a mayor and why?
He owned some businesses and still does in Carmel, California, which is his chosen hometown of, at this point, 60 years. Um, and he couldn't get a land use, a zoning change for a property that he owned to build something. And Carmel at the time was so um, sort of tradition bound that Clint wanting to change uh, a property zoning certification so that he could build a 2-story office building made him a radical lefty. Carmel at the time had no downtown sidewalks. It was you could technically have gotten a ticket for wearing high heels. Until last year or the year before, the houses did not have street numbers. So the postal service would not deliver your mail because they won't deliver to like the Pink House on Drury Lane. You have to have a number. So you had to have a post office box. And the only building in town that had a street address was the post office. And Clint just came in and, made things like ice cream cones to go legal. He built stairs from the main sidewalk down to the beach. He fixed the library, but his main thing was just to, allow a reasonable amount of business freedom to happen. And once he got a land use, a set of land use reforms instituted in this very tiny city, he was done. He never had bigger political aspirations. It happened to coincide with the Reagan years. So people like, he wants to be governor, he wants to be president. And he would never, he didn't want to do that. People thought the same thing about Paul Newman. He was very outspoken. He attended a couple of Democratic national conventions as a delegate. He spoke on sort of like Nightline, debated people on the right about, political issues, but he never wanted political office. These guys, they consider themselves citizens and they have the right to say their views. And Clint took it that one step further for 24 months. But that was all their ambition amounted to, just make this change and then let me get back to work.